Hello and good morning friends, welcome to the CEC-UGC live lecture. For all the students of Human Resource Management, dear friends, we would like to tell you all that in today's lecture, we would be covering two topics. In first session, we would be discussing on designing a training program, whereas in the second session, we would be discussing on competency-based training. And for the very discussion, we have once again with us in our studios, Dr. Namita Rajput. Dr. Namita Rajput is an eminent academician, author of numerous books. Many of her articles have been published in reputed journals. She regularly visits various colleges and universities for delivering lectures, as well as I would like to tell you all that many of her books have been with you, so you just need to flip those books, you just need to flip the papers of the books, and definitely you would be going the maximum content which you are searching for. So dear friends, we would like to tell you all that Dr. Namita Rajput is currently associated as Associate Professor in Sri Aurobindo College. So let's welcome our guest Dr. Namita Rajput, and let's try to understand more and more about designing a training program and competency based training. Hello ma'am.
Thank you, Kritika. So I take this opportunity to dedicate this lecture on designing of a training program. In my last lecture, we did about the training and development, the differences between the two, and how the training program helped the employees and the company itself. So basically, when the program was designed in terms of the training, there was a discussion on that there has to be a continuity of the training program. We have to analyze the organization, we have to organize the task, we have to analyze the individual, and there are so many content analysis to be done before designing any kind of a training program. So in today's lecture, we would be focusing on the meaning and the significance of the training design. So after assessing the training needs, the training manager will come to know whether the training is right solution for the performance or compliance problem. And if the training is seen as a solution to the problem, then the training process moves to the next stage, that is designing a program. And designing a successful training program requires not only a thorough understanding of the training program, but also a well-stated definition of the results to be achieved and a thought-out plan for achieving those results. So as a matter of fact, you have to understand the concept, the need, and the significance of the training in an organization. And if you are well convinced that after conducting a good training program, the takeouts and the outcomes would be good, then if you agree on this, then only you design a training program, because there has to be a lot of investment, time, etc. to accomplish the objectives of the organization. And to accomplish the organizational objectives, we need to understand the training program needs, etc. So if all the people who are associated with the organization, that is the compliance and the formulation of the objectives, if they are all convinced that yes, the training sessions would be beneficial for them, so then the efforts are put onto the designing of the training program. So once the program is yes, that is all the organizational people say yes to the training program, then the designing has to be done very thoroughly, very diligently, and very rationally, because there are so many preconditions which you have to fulfill, there are so many parameters which you have to scrutinize, and there are many horizons and paradigms which you have to see to analyze and design the best training program to have the best results out of that training program, so that the takeaways of the training program are good and it is beneficial for the employer as well as for the employee. So taking my presentation forward, so we would be seeing that the designing is definitely a very planned activity, and in terms of the planning there are so many parameters which you have to see, like what is the training program and the framework for analyzing the training program, defining the intended outcome out of it, designing how to present the content to the learners to achieve those outcomes, developing the training course according to the design implementation of the course, evaluating its effectiveness, and devising a follow-up activity. So we have seen there are, the list is not exhaustive, but yes, these are the prime points which have to be considered when you have to design a training program. That is, you have to first see that what is the outcome which we are looking for and what is the results we are striving for. So according to the outcomes and the takeaways, we design the program, and we have to see that what is the present level of the people there and what is the desired level, because training programs definitely plug the gaps and fill the gaps of where we are and where we want to go. And accordingly, we have to design the programs and we have to put in the best efforts to implement that program also in a most effective manner. So you have to evaluate its effectiveness, you have to do a cost benefit analysis, because I told you that in the beginning that when you design a training program, there's a cost factor and there is a return factor, that is the cost and the benefit. That is, what is the total cost to frame that designing program and what is the final benefits which you are going to derive out of that planning program of the training sessions which you are trying to keep for the organizational employees. Then of course you have to devise a follow-up activity in which you will do a pre and a post analysis, that what was the scenario before putting on the schedule of the training sessions and what is the scenario after the training session has been done. So the follow-up activity would actually tell you the real insights of the successfulness of a particular training program, that whether the program which was scheduled for the organizational employees, is there any benefit you have received out of it, if there is any problems out of it, and so on and so forth. So you will do a post and a pre-analysis of the training session. So that is going to give you the real insights that whether the training program was effective or not. So follow-up mechanism is perhaps the best way to understand and have the deep insights of the training sessions. Then again, the training designers have to consider certain very important factors, that is the three perspectives before designing a program, and three perspectives are cost, availability and the appropriateness. So I must focus on these points first. That is, you have to understand that what is the cost factor, that is when you design a training program, how much cost you have to spend on the training program. Then of course you have to see the availability, that is after the implementation, what is the total infrastructure which is there to set up that program and to carry it forward smoothly or not. And finally and eventually, whether the training sessions which have been scheduled, are they appropriate for the people or not. Because sometimes the training programs are having a fault in their design. So basic purpose and the basic objective of setting up of the training program is defeated. So you have to understand these three basic prime parameters, that is, you have to see the cost factor, you have to see the availability of the infrastructure to carry out that training program, and eventually you have to see the appropriateness of the training program, that is, the training program is appropriate for the employees or not, whether the design is appropriate or not. So after scrutinizing and deeply analyzing these three parameters, then you carry on with your training sessions. So, and of course, you have to understand here one thing, that whatever training programs are set up or they are scheduled for the employees, for the benefit derived out of it to the employees, for the betterment of employees, for enriching their experience, for enriching their skills, for enriching their capabilities and potential. All these things have to be focused on the employees only. So you have to basically understand that what level the employees have, the present level, and what is the level, desired level, which the organizational people want them to learn. And then of course the training program is of course involving huge time and cost and efforts, so it has to be time bound. That is, you have to have maybe a 3-week session or a 2-week session or a 6-month session accordingly. That is the skills which you have to endorse onto the employees. You have to decide on the time factor also. So one thing we have learned here, that the training programs have to be time bound, they have to be focused for the learners, then it should be based on the identified needs and it has a measurable objectives. That is one thing here we would like to focus here, that unless and until we have the objectives which are measurable, you will not be able to have the effectiveness of that training program. That is, whether the training program proved to be beneficial or not, or is there any significant difference between the pre and the post training session. So for this you have to have the measurable objectives in front of you, so that you are able to finally and eventually identify that whether the training program is successful or not. Then of course the training design is nothing but a training plan which involves the 3 activities. Starting from the first, you have to state the training objectives. Number 2, you have to identify the learning activities as well as the methodologies. And last, the sequencing the activities in which they have to be done in a very meaningful and the learning way. So these are the 3 steps and most important and the vital aspects which you have to keep in mind when you're designing a training schedule or a training program. So again, having a look on this, we have to have the training objectives, that is what you have to finally achieve after the completion of that successful training program, and what are the learning objectives, and in terms of how would you endorse these training program to the employees, that is the methodologies and the pedagogies which you have to adopt. And finally, you have to sequence the activities, that this is the first thing which you have to do and this is the subsequent thing which you have to do. So you have to sequence your activity in a very logical way. So after having these 3 steps, you will be able to have the best initiation and the designing and implementation of the training program. So let us now see the steps involved in the training program, that is in designing of a training program. The first would be determining the training needs of the employees. Number 2, selecting the target group. Number 3, preparing the trainers. Number 4, formulating the training packages. Number 5, presentation by the trainer. Number 6, the presentation. And the final step would be a follow-up. So I would be explaining all these 7 steps one by one. So let us have now look on the first step, which is most significant and vital in designing of the training program. That is, you have to understand what are the training needs of an employee. So to accomplish this first very basic step in designing the training program, you have to identify what kind of employees are there as a part of your workforce, what present potential and the capabilities they have at present without giving them any kind of a training session, and what is the new employee basically want, whether they want a general introduction training or some employees may have the problem in specific areas, then you have to have a specific training for them. So the most important thing here you have to understand that it is primarily the work of the human resource department to give the number of the people whom the training is needed. That is not even the number, but also they have to give the information about the type of the training which the employees want. Because the new incumbents are very, they are not familiar with the environment of the organization. So basically they need only the introductory training and giving some kind of a history and the background of the company, and they are well versed with the culture of the organization. But talking about the employees who are already a part of the organization, they need a training, specific training, because we are living in a very dynamic world. So the dynamic world even persists the changes into the organizational system and the organizational system outside the organization also, because the overall environment in which we are operating is not fixed, it is not static. So once we are living in a dynamic world and the dynamism is so strong that you cannot continue with your previous activities, you have to really update your employees, and to update your employees you have to design time and again the good training sessions to them, the good training programs to them, so as to maintain the pace of the organization and to achieve the objectives of the organization. So now coming on to the second point in designing of a training program, that is you have to select a group. So once you have to see that there are about 10 people who need the introductory training, there are 5 people who need the specific training, some people would be needing only the training in terms of the tools and the equipment. So everybody has to have a different kind of a training session. So you have to do here, you have to group those people. That is, if the people are not well versed with the culture, so you can form one group and you can call it as an introductory training group. So the introductory training sessions would be given to them. Similarly, the people who are not familiar with the operations of the machine, so you can have the operating sessions for them, you can group them together. And similarly, there are other people who need some kind of a specific training program. So again, you have to group them. So grouping of the select target group is very essential. After determining their training needs, the next step is to select the target group which require the requisite training. And based on the information collected, the HR department classifies the employees into different groups on the basis of the training and the levels of the organization and the intensity of the training. Now, there are certain objectives in the organizations which are very difficult to be achieved. So, for that we need to have a specific training sessions for them. We have to design some good programs for them, and some training sessions are very simple, whereas if you compare, because the certain objectives are very important and vital for the organization, then you have to design some kind of a very specific programs for them. So again, you have to have a select target group in front of you so that you can design and customize the training programs accordingly. Then we have to prepare our trainers. Preparing the trainers is a very vital step in designing of the training program sessions for the organizational employees, because here all the information has to be given to them. There has to be a one-to-one program initiation chat with them, because it is the HR department who is going to give a vital information about how many number of people are there who need training. Number two, what kind of training are they needed, and accordingly, if the organization is big, they are having in-house trainers with them. But yes, if the organization is working at a smaller level, that is the small and medium enterprises, for them it is not advisable to outsource it from the organization, or maybe they have to design very specifically because they're working at a very smaller pace and a smaller scale. So they don't have that much money for them with them to spend on the training program. So you have to see the nature of the organization, the complexities of the organization, and then they decide the in-house training for them and the outsourcing of the training for them. So if the organization is very complex and large, it makes sense to make your own department, which is an in-house training department, wherein the cost effectiveness for the organization is there, because otherwise if you outsource such good number of the people in terms of giving training to them, it is going to be a very costly affair for the organization. So depending upon the intensity of the training they need, depending upon the complexities, and depending upon the level they need, the in-house and the out-house training programs are scheduled accordingly. But most of the organizations which are big and complex, they are having in-house training sessions given to the employees. So HR department provides necessary information on the basis of which we decide the training sessions, and we have to make good nomenclature is given to them, and after grouping of the target group, this is eventually we have to prepare the trainers, because only then the training programs would be very effective for them. So let us now come on to the formulating the training packages. Now see, we have decided upon the number of the people to be trained. We have discussed about the target group for which the training program has to be given, and finally you have prepared the trainers also. That was the third step of the training program. Now here we have to decide and devise about the formulating the training packages. In terms of giving them the training packages, we have to decide that what kind of handouts would be given to them after each session, and what would be the number of the training days, the number of sessions in each day, the topics to be handled, the methodology to be used, the test series to be given in every session, and the printed material or the handouts to be given. So after the trainer has been hired, or maybe it is an in-house trainer, you have to decide about the intact training schedule which covers all these points. That is, you have to decide upon the number of sessions to be given, the time and the number of hours to be given, then what exactly has to be given in each session, and what all are topics to be covered and handled in each session, followed by what kind of methodology has to be used, what particular test has to be adopted, and eventually you have to find out what is the printed material and the takeaways or the handouts which has to be given to the trainees. So this is a very important step, because we are having a human brain, and to memorize and remember everything is very difficult. So time and again the organization has to decide upon the takeouts and the handouts also. So the fifth step here now would be the presentation by the trainer. On the first day, the trainer introduces himself and states the need and objectives of the program, and then he initiates the scheduled program, and the training assess the current level of performance of each employee and provides the necessary feedback. So this is how we carry on with the program. That is, you have to give a presentation as a trainer. So in that trainer, the first day the trainer introduces himself that I am a trainer and this is what I am going to teach you in this number of hours and in this number of sessions. So he initiates the program, and after he initiates the program, he discusses and introduces every participant of that training session, and he would be discussing about their present needs and what their present skills are and what is eventually the outcome which we are looking for after the successful completion of the training session. So this is again a very vital step, because here the trainer and the trainees, they will be one-to-one and they will be having a face-to-face interaction, which is going to be a real fruitful session for both the trainers as well as the trainees. There has to be one thing which is very important, that when you are imparting the training also, it's your training session as well, because when you are teaching, you are learning also, because of the trainees, they have so much of queries and they have so many problems which they discuss, and there are certain issues which even the trainers have never thought about earlier. So it's a learning experience for the trainers also. So this is a kind of a session which is very, very important. So taking it to the sixth step, that is the designing of a training program, the number 6 point is the performance. After the training program is over, the participants report back to their office and prepares an inclusive report on the entire training program, mentioned what they have learned, and after that they start implementing the methods and techniques which they have learned during their training session. So this is eventually the final outcome which we look for, that is, we always strive for the highest performance. That is, after the completion of the training program, we have to look for the performance, and this is eventually the goal which every organization is striving for. So you have to make an inclusive report of what you have learned. You have to submit that report to your seniors and to the people to whom you have to report, and finally you start implementing that this is what we have learned in our training sessions, and you start implementing in your actual work schedule and your practical activities, which is a part and the parcel of your formal procedures in the organization. So eventually every organization sees that the performance of the people who are under training must be many-folds, increased many-folds. And the last is the follow-up. The progress and the performance of the employees is persistently tracked and observed, and appropriate incentives are given to those participants who implement whatever he has learned in the training efficiently. So coming on to the last point of this training and designing of a training program, there is a concept called a follow-up. Unless and until we make sure that the purpose of the training is achieved or defeated, we have to have a follow-up activity. The follow-up activity will actually give us the real insights that whether the program which was scheduled, is that program good enough to achieve the organizational objectives or not, or are there any shortcomings, are there any problems, so that when you carry on with the further training activities, those problems will never be repeated. So coming on to a role-specific training. You must be understanding that the organizations, that is the contemporary modern organizations, are very complex. So every now and again the dynamism is there, the culture and the climate of the organization, when you talk about the inside environment or you talk about the outside environment, it keeps changing. So certain needs have to be catered to very specifically, and to achieve the specific needs of the particular employees, we have a specific role training. So role specific training is a very wonderful concept which these organizations are adopting to particularly cater to the specific role and the particular specific objectives which the organizations has formulated, and again this is in sync with the overall organizational objectives. So let us have now a look on what is a role specific training. Many organizations offer training in their product and services. They are generally one size fits all focused approach. By focusing only on tool training, this approach often ignores what it takes mean an implementation successful. While this can really help some team members at the individual level, more often than not it does not help in enterprise achieving the goals of the successful implementation and the enterprise project management. So when you talk about the role specific training, it is definitely a win-win situation for the individual, because the individual would be learning these specific skills, and those specific skills are strictly associated with the particular job and the specific job which he has been assigned. So the most effective training strategy is role based and followed by a structured mentoring and coaching. The reason for its effectiveness can be attributed to the number of factors and the elements taken into considerations. So some of which are very unique to the specific role and the organization. It puts the training in context of the role and what it takes to perform that role. We can look at a role and it correlates to a defined work activity to which the staff member has been assigned. These staff members also follow the process procedures, use enterprise tools and adhere to reporting structures and the cycle. So here we talk about the role specific training. Again, it is individually focused, it is specific job focused. The objectives are also particularly job focused, and overall the benefit of introducing this kind of training sessions, not the generic sessions but the specific sessions, that the individual who are undergoing these kind of activities, they are able to achieve these specific objectives in the best efficient manner. And taking it further, the role-based training takes into account all these elements and integrates them into one class that results in a tight focus on the specific role. The attending individual will know how to proceed deliverables, follow the process, use the tools and comply with the necessary reporting cycles and requirement. So once you understand that this is your specific role and this is how you have to carry on with the specific activities which are associated with the specific jobs. So overall outcome of the training sessions in terms of the role specific training is wonderful, and the individual would be enriched and he would be having more skill development capabilities and potential, but again associated with that particular job only. So despite the benefits, some organizations they shy away from the role based training on the grounds that it is a very costly affair or it takes longer to produce, and some would argue that time and the cost are saved by a more effective implementation with individual requiring little to no refresher training. They also leave the classrooms with a manual that directly supports their particular situation, making it excellent material for both tool and procedural reference. So here I would like to refer here that the specific training program are definitely an asset. Why? Because the individuals can customize their needs according to the specific job conditions and the job requirements of the organizations, and eventually after the successful completion of this role specific training program, the individual will now be a better individual because he is enriched, he is having a good implementation of that particular job which he has been endorsed in this particular training sessions. Some people are definitely not for it because it involves a lot of cost and it is only catering to an individual, not a generic type of a training program. So here we have to understand and optimize and customize the training program because there is no one ball which will suit all. So it is on the take of the organizations only that they have to decide which kind of a training sessions would suit them, would suit their employees, and eventually they have to take a final decision whether the training would be a generic or a role specific training. So I hope this session has given you some insights about that how to design the training program, and specifically I have focused on what is a specific training. Thank you so much. So good afternoon friends. So taking my session forward, this session would be now focused on the competency based training approach. So as we have seen in the earlier session that there is a strong need for the training sessions for designing in a very specific and efficient manner, and after taking into consideration so much of parameters, paradigms, the resources you have, the needs of the organization, the objectives of the organizations, we are able to design the best program for the employees of an organization. But the only one focus is there, that is you are able to achieve the organizational objectives in the best efficient manner. So the modern organizations of today, they are striving for the best achievement with lesser resources to be used and having the best returns out of it. So when you want the people to be very efficient, you have to design some kind of good training sessions for them. And finally, the outcome of the training sessions would be always beneficial because there is a substantial differences you can see in the pre and the post training sessions of the organizational training programs. So the aftermath of the training program will now tell you that this is good for the organization, and eventually the organizations of today are looking for some best and the good training sessions which can enrich their employees, which can enhance their potentials and which can enhance their capabilities also. Because we are living in a competitive environment and the competitors are so strong that if you're not maintaining a pace in terms of using the new pedagogies, new technologies, new trends, new fashion, then of course you will be quite behind in the race. So which no organization wants to look forward. So let us now see a very contemporary form of an organizational training program which is called as a competency training based program. So the first thing which I would like to focus here is that it has to be a learner focused program. That is, you have to understand the needs of the people who have to undergo a training program, and then finally you have to give the program accordingly. So the center of this kind of a competency based program is the learner. Then you have to understand and you have to focus on the skills which he has already, what kind of knowledge he has already, and what kind of change you want in the behavior of an individual and in terms of the actions of the individual. Then you have to understand the ability to do versus to know, and finally you have to align to the strategic objectives. Since we are living in a VUCA world, so the name sounds very funny, but yes, let us understand what does the VUCA means. V stands for the volatility, U stands for the uncertainty, C stands for the complexity, and A stands for the ambiguity. So let us now focus the backdrop and the significance that why we are undergoing a competency program. We are living in a very volatile world, and I mean every now and then there are fluctuations in terms of every aspect and the modern paradigms and the frontiers of the modern contemporary organizations. So you are living in a very volatile world followed by the uncertainties. The uncertainties could be a result of the changes in the government policies, the changing in the political setup, the changes in the competitive environment, the changes in the trends and the styles which are happening across the globe, because we are living in a global economy. And you never know what kind of liberalized policies are on the way. And definitely whatever programs and whatever has been scheduled will be multiplied by 0, because you are not taking into consideration those uncertainties in the program of the organization, followed by the complexities. We are living in a very complex world, and the simplicity is never a part of the organizations of today, because we are living in an environment in which ICT is aggressively increasing at a very higher rate. ICT, I understand that it is a integration of communication technologies. So when the communication technologies are so fast, dynamic and ever changing, so you cannot have a static environment in front of you. So every now and then everything is changing, everything is going a sea change, and there are because of these volatile environment, uncertainties and complexities, we are having a lot of ambiguities in front of us. That is, there is no clarity that which path would be a good path for the organization. So there are so many challenges also which the organizations of today are facing. Some challenges are external in nature and some challenges are internal in nature. When you talk about the external challenges, there is a change and there is a capacity to adapt, followed by the internal change, that is the employee retention is a problem, the workplace is a problem, and then of course the demographic is also a problem. So once we are living in a VUCA world and we have so much of challenges in and outside the organizations, the complexities, degrees are definitely on a very high scale. So where there is a strong need for a competency-based training. So competency-based training focuses on the identified workforce behavior, which is very essential to achieve the organizational strategic goals. So since you understand that we are living in a very competitive world, so you have to be very specific about that what are the particular objectives which are very vital and significant for the organization, and accordingly you have to give the competency based training to your employees so that you are able to achieve the organizational goals and very quickly and very efficiently. So coming on to the basics of the competency training program. The first is the competency-based training is a very unique approach to training design that builds and enhances the individual competencies in line with the previously identified profiles of the success. This also helps, this training fills the gap between the workers' actual performance and their ideal performance. And the competency-based training basics show the readers how to assess which competencies are important to an organization and individual positions and how to design the training around those competencies. See, when the organizations are operating, they are having a roadmap, they are having a particular line of action, that is here we are and here we have to go. So there is a roadmap. So this competency training based program, they really help you in where the organizational people of today are and where they want to go. So it bridges the gap and try to endorse those capabilities into those individuals. So there is an individual development also, so that they are able to achieve those particular objectives in a very efficient manner. So it definitely fills the gap of the workers to achieve their actual performance and to see their actual performance and to achieve their ideal performance. So it bridges the gap of the actual performance and the ideal performance of the employees. So let us now take it forward. The competency based training program is, first you have to see is the alignment. So let us have a look here. There has to be a very continuous adjustment based on the organizational goals. Now see, once you have achieved and formulated the organizational goals, you have made a roadmap of this is what the organizational objectives would be. And definitely once we are operating in a dynamic environment, we have to constantly endorse and fix up these kind of training schedules and the training programs to enrich them, to update them with the present day scenario so that they are maintaining the pace of the organization. So overall there has to be adjustment, alignment of the organizational objectives in backdrop of these changing environment. Followed by, it has to be employee focused. And what key competencies actually the employee needs supports the achievement of the employee goals. So overall the employee focusedness is the prime point in terms of the competency based training program, because ultimately it is the employee who has to actually work and be in action. So if he is not able to endorse and adapt with these modern changes which the competency training program is to give them, the overall performance would be dropped. So first thing which we have to understand is that we have to align the objectives, and secondly we have to do whatever activities have to do has to be employee focused. So taking it forward, the managers have unique opportunities in their daily interaction with the employees to enrich them, to discover and develop their competencies, and they have the ability to position the employees in role whether they can do what they can do the best in every day. Employees who feel engaged at work and who are able to use their strength in their jobs and are more productive and profitable have a higher quality of work. So here we have to understand that unless and until there is a constant interaction of the human resource manager or the team with the people, so you will not be able to understand that what kind of skills and particular abilities they have to be enhanced with. So interactions of the managers with the other employees is a very vital and a prominent activity which is definitely a part and parcel of the competency based training, because it provides you a good base. After having a lot of discussions and the interactions with the employee and the team, you would would be able to understand that this is what they are lagging behind and this is what the desired performance is and this is what their actual performance is. So you try to sync in line with the organizational and the strategic objectives, that this is what you're going to be adopting for the roadmap of the organizational objective and to achieve the success in the organization. Then as it is building on the strengths, the competency based training programs, they definitely help the employees to build on the strengths. Different people have a different style and they have different capabilities and potentials. So the competency based program is little individualistic in nature, which helps in building the strengths of the organization, so that the organization is able to reap all the fruits in terms of the expertise which they will develop after the competency based program, training based program is over. Followed by the target. The targeted issue is a very important issue in the competency based program. The skills and the knowledge are gained with the purpose of supporting the performance. So basically you have to target and enhance the skills of the organization so that they are able to understand what kind of issues are very important. And finally we have the implementation process with us, that is the implementation of the competency based program. So for this we have to do the performance analysis of the employees, we have to assess and measure their present and the future needs, we have to create and develop the individual programs, we have to establish the competencies accordingly, we have to establish the job role standards, and finally we will identify the skills and the gaps. So when you understand all these points one by one, so the first thing which you have to understand is the performance analysis. So to understand the performance analysis, we have basically 3 points. The first is we have to begin with the end in mind. That is the first thing which you have to focus here is the last mile where you have to reach. So you have to start with the keeping into consideration the end point in the mind, followed by accomplishment of the organizational goals. That is, you do the performance analysis, that is, you have to finally analyze that whether the goals which you have fixed for the organization, are you able to achieve that goal or not. So once you are doing the performance analysis, you have to start and begin with the final end point where you have to go, and you have to see whether you are able to accomplish the organizational goals and objectives or not, and finally the need for the speed and the need for competency is there or not. So or keeping into consideration and the scrutiny of all these 3 points, we do the performance analysis, which is perhaps the first point in terms of the competency based program. Then next point would be establish the competencies. Now you understand that what particular competencies have to be developed in terms of the individuals. So here we have to see who are the top performance across the job roles, that is, who are able to perform the jobs well. You have to do a critical characteristics and the capabilities, and the need for speed and need for competency again is there. So once you establish the competencies, for this you have to understand who are the top performers of the organization, and what you will actually critically appraise their capabilities and the qualities they have, and accordingly you will put in the best efforts to enhance those capacities, those potentialities, those add-ons which is going to really help the organization to achieve the organizational objectives. Then we have the different competencies levels with us, that is, you develop the core competencies in terms of the industry and the culture. You have to develop the job family competencies in terms of maintaining the business discipline, and followed by the job role competencies, that is the level of the mastery which is required by each individual to achieve the organizational goals. So this was about developing the competency levels. Then what about the new and emerging competencies? What is the importance of it and what it is? So once you establish a role standards for them, you have to understand and develop that what is the final level of the mastery which the organizational employees have to develop. So unless and until that landmark and that point is fixed, it is very difficult to understand the competency based training. So you have to first fix up the level of the mastery required, whether the 80% performance level would be good or a 70 level performance would be good. So there has to be a very clarity in this regard, that is what level of mastery is required. Then about the individual contributor or the executive, and finally the benchmark and the assessing. For example, I have fixed a benchmark of 50 units per day, and actually if I see the organizational objectives, we are able to achieve only 40. So that means there is a gap of 10 units. So you have to understand and put in your efforts, best efforts to develop the competencies of the employees so that they are able to achieve those 50 units in a day. So this is really going to help the organizational, and this is what is called as a role specific standards. Then you have to identify the skill gaps. So different people have a different desired levels, and they have a different competency levels and a different achievement levels, because we are all human beings. We have our own likes and dislikes. We are having all different levels to work. Some people are having inherent disliking for work. Some people are workaholic. So definitely we cannot have one size fitting for all. So that is why you have to do an individual analysis in terms of identifying the skill gaps, and then you have to design 3-4 competencies which are very vital to achieve the objectives of that particular task. And finally, you have to identify the applied competencies, which is really going to be a boon for the organization. So here we have in front of you identify the skill gaps. For example, the competency which the organization is going to develop is a customer focus. So what are the supporting behavior of the employee which is desired? First is consider both short and the long term interest of the customer in making service decisions. You have to create the strategies to help the organization serve the customers more effectively. You have to establish and maintain the effective relationship with the customer and gain their trust and respect. So this is how the desired behavior is supported, and the competency finally and eventually which will be developed is called as a customer focus. So this was an example to make you understand the concept. The next would be the assess and the measure. So performance improvement definitely is the final thing which you're looking for, that there has to be an improvement in the performance, because the employees would be putting their best efforts in terms of after the implementation of the training program, what is the improvement in their performance levels, followed by what is the kind of a behavior change are you looking for, and of course that change which you're looking for has to be a positive change, followed by the organizational capacities and the capabilities. So what could be the benefits of a competency based program? So this is a very important topic which will be covered in this lecture. It ensures that the organization's funded training programs are professional development activities. They are cost effective, goal oriented and productive. It enables the employees to achieve a high level of competency in an efficient manner. It records the employee acquisition of skills, knowledge, safety and other procedures relating to each task. It reduces the cost overruns which is caused by a poor performance or miscommunication of job expectation. It improves the communication between the employee and the management, followed by their increased internal employee mobility, providing the organization with a greater ability, scale and flex as needed, and establishes a framework for constructive feedback by management at scheduled training and performance appraisal intervals, followed by it clarifies the job standards for performance appraisals, and it outlines the employee development and promotional paths within the organization. And last but not the least, it helps in creating and basically the performance expectations for the employee, enabling them to achieve the best organizational objectives in a very most efficient way with most cost effective manner. It gives the employees the insight into an overall strategy of their team, department and organization, leading to a greater engagement and motivation. So here we have seen that overall the employee evaluation program, design program and the competency training based program is a very win-win situation for both employer and employee. It not only optimizes on the cost, but it also improves and enhances the potentialities, capabilities of the employees who have undergone this kind of a competency based program. So there's a clear-cut rule and a roadmap in terms of the competency based program. It enhances their skills for the new jobs, for the existing jobs, for their day-to-day requirement, for achieving a proactive role in the organizational success path, and finally the professional development of the employees and the professional development of the employers also. So it is very imperative for us to understand and evaluate the training effectiveness. So we have now learned about so many things in terms of the training and development. We have understood about the role specific training in the first part of the session. We talked about the competency based program training in the second session. How to design the best programs ever was again a part of it. And finally, we are now coming on to the evaluation of the training effectiveness. So this is a concept which is most important. Unless and until you understand that whether the program and the training program which has been scheduled and done in the organization, are they effective or not? So how to evaluate that? So let us have now a look on the evaluation of the effectiveness of the training program. It is imperative to measure and evaluate the effectiveness of the training and development programs to assess whether these programs have achieved for which they are actually designed. So this is a very important concept. This evaluation helps the organization in designing the future training program also, and to make necessary modifications in the present model, followed by the organizational initiative training program in response to difficulties with employee performance and poor quality work, followed by the tools for appraising the training, give feedback about the competency of the training program. The management can address these inadequacies and supplementary training program design, especially for the gaps that the measurement tools ascertains. So there has to be one thing which is highlighted here, that when you are doing the evaluation of the training effectiveness program which has been scheduled in an organizational to achieve the organizational objectives in a very efficient and a cost effective manner, you have to understand and you have to scrutinize, you have to do the plus and the minus, and you have to do a pre and a post analysis of the training program. That is, whether the training program was good enough, but the purpose of the training program was achieved or not. So this you have to take the feedback from the trainees, you have to take the feedback from the trainers, that what kind of problems which you faced, what specific instructions are there for the when you have the future programs in front of us. So there are so many things the evaluation would help. So if the training feedback gives you a negative results, then organization or the management of the organization would be giving you some kind of a supplementary sessions to supplement the training program which has been scheduled, because the organization has spent so much of money in respect of designing a program, in terms of implementing the program. So how can an organization would take it as a waste? So if the feedback is giving you some kind of a negative and the apprehensive view about the effectiveness of the training program, so the management would take the best efforts to give you some kind of supplementary training sessions, so that the money and the time and the efforts which the organization has done before is not a waste. Then you have to do a course evaluation also, that is the content. Under this method, the training evaluation questionnaire is designed and the trainees are asked to fill it. This is one of the most effective tool which would help in measuring the usefulness of the training program. The organizational assimilate the information gathered through the questionnaire with the organizational objective to get a comprehensive picture of the training outcomes. Then what is the criteria for evaluating the training program? That is, you will see the performance levels of the organizational people. You would see the behavior, that is the employee behavior too affects the productivity. So you have to see the behavior of the employees to actually make you understand the effectiveness of the training program, followed by what kind of knowledge have they gained in terms of these programs. And of course, the last but not the least, here I would like to finally come on to the end of this presentation by just giving you a concept of what is a training process outsourcing. Now see, when the organization is large, complex, so it is better to hire an organization in terms of you can make it an in-house training also. So let us have a look on this. The training imparted to the employees is an essential area of the human resource management, which increases the knowledge and the skills for a specific job. Since training is a very recurring activity, it is a very tedious and time-consuming activity, so big organizations organize in-house training of their employees, while small and medium organizations may find it profitable to outsource the same. So here we have seen one difference, that if the organization size is complex and big, they would like to have an in-house department, which is the job of that particular department will only be to impart these kind of training programs to the employees. Whereas if your organization is operating at a very medium and a small scale, then it is very obvious that they would be outsourcing it, because you just have to give the hiring charges for the outsourcing people who are just giving their services. So you have to have, if you're not having an adequate infrastructure, it is always important to outsource, and if you're having the good infrastructure, it always makes sense, because it is a cost effective aspect, that if you have the in-house infrastructure with you, then you can formulate the training programs in-house only. And finally, with a conscious need to cut down the cost, save time, the SMEs, that is the small and the medium enterprises, more often outsource the training process according to the training needs of the employees. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope the session has given you the good insights about the competency based training program. Here in the second part of my lecture. Thank you so much.
With this note, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for giving us a very, very productive session. Dear friends, we believe that you might have got the maximum ingredients from the two sessions which were conducted for you today. That is on designing a training program, whereas the other one was on competency-based training. So, if you have any queries pertaining to the two topics, then you can mail us at info.cec@nic.in. And very soon, this lecture is going to be uploaded for you on YouTube. Keep giving your feedback as well as keep watching these lectures. We would be meeting again very soon and would be discussing on another important topics under the series Human Resource Management. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much.